flavor in, especially when you're dealing with eggs. And egg substitute responds very well to this. Okay, so we'll just let that go over the stove. And then add these to it. Now, this is exactly the same plant or vegetable, or fruit if you like, I suppose. This is a capsaicin, which is capsicum. And this is the red pepper, and it's just cut up in small pieces. This is the same thing, but it has been bottled. It's called pimiento, when it's been roasted on the outside and peeled. Now, why? Well, it's a question of texture. So it's not only color, but texture as well. Now, you could probably say, oh, Graham, that's just ridiculous. And that's fine if you feel that. You should go ahead and do it. But just try just once and see whether you like the idea of the two kinds of pepper together. So we just place those into the pan too. So one will be crisp and the other one will be that, and it's colorful. Huh? Then a cup of thawed sweet corn. You know, I always give you all of the details so you can write it down. I hope you're writing it down. Then there's the book, you know, whatever way you like to do it. It's your choice. Then, good. Greens, gold, red, great. A little bit of the Canadian bacon, because when I explore how to create some dishes, I like to think of the things about the greatest food that people enjoy so much and what they like about it, and try and get into the thought. How about eggs and bacon on a rainy morning, you know, where you stop by on the way to a construction site, and you stop by at one of those little places for breakfast, and hot steaming cup of coffee and eggs and bacon sizzling in the pan. Well, so I took that thought and said, all right, well, put some Canadian bacon in there and sizzle that around as well. Now I've got the ginger and the Canadian bacon, and it looks terrific. Smells wonderful. Now for the assault. You think the egg substitute was bad enough? Here it is, tofu. Now tofu is really glycine max. I was absolutely thrilled to hear that it was called max. Glycine, that's soybeans, by the way. And we actually, in the United States, that's where I am at the moment, grow 3/4 of all the soybeans in the world. And so we've got a lot of things to do with it. And this is one of the best. Firm, look for it as firm soy, or bean curd it could be called, tofu. And just stir that in, and what's happening when it reaches that pan, all the other flavors say, hi, you're welcome, you know, because tofu's got almost nothing to say for itself at all. It just sort of walks in and sort of stands there, you know, and all these colorful characters surround it and give all of what they've got in flavor to the tofu. But if the tofu goes on its own, it's pretty sad. You know, it never makes it in a party. You might experience that. All right, now, a little bit of the margarine, again, the polyunsaturated margarine into this one, just to make sure that we're right down on this saturated fat business. And, okay, and one little carton, which is about 8 ounces. When you read the side of the carton, you'll see that it has the same protein content as whole eggs, same volume. So if you're a little bit concerned about, you know, is this just egg white and hasn't got anything to it? No, it's got a good deal of protein, which is excellent. So just let it stand there, you remember, like it did before. And try and avoid getting at it straight away. I know by habit that you'll try and do that, but try to avoid it. And then a little bit of that salt and pepper. Very important indeed, even if you're just having it on its own. Then push it from the sides and pull into the center, okay? Just keep doing it. The more you throw yourself at it, if you whip it around quickly, like you would do eggs, it won't work. It'll break. But you see, keep on pushing it into the center, and it works very well. Keep it so it's moist there, then spread it out. Just spread it out a little bit over the bottom of the pan, and then take all of that cascading color, aroma, color, and texture, pile it into the top. Put, always, with these pans, always get really good, you know, action going as quickly as you can to be able to get the pan clean. And there it is, stirred in together. So, get a plate, pull it. Oh, Mum, I hope you're watching. Just now and again, you know when you've really done something and you think it looks great and you want your mother to watch. This is for 2 people, by the way, so I mean there's plenty there. Right. And there, little bit of rice on the side if you're going to do it European way, or rice in a bowl if you're going to do it Asian way. Yeah. Good. And now let's compare this with the traditional egg foo young and see how we go. Now the actual classic in this case we'll have a look at in a moment, but doesn't it look nice on a plate? Plenty of color and the rice by the side. Looks fine. Now the egg foo young, which is the standard, of course it would be served with rice as well and compared it in the same way, has a sort of beef sauce on it. It's really extraordinary. And of course whole eggs. This is the difference that you get. Not much in terms of the overall calories. So it's 245, but that's a great number. That's with the rice. And then with the fat here, instead of 20 grams of fat, that's down to only 3 grams of fat, one of which is saturated. This is good stuff. So instead of a 63% calories from fat, we've now got down to only 12% calories from fat, teeming with flavor at the same time. Cholesterol only 7, and 314 in sodium, which is a mere bagatelle, whatever that is, and then 3 grams of dietary fiber, which is all the vegetables, which of course are just sensational. Okay. Now, chopsticks, perhaps, if you want to try it that way. And I'm going to try it with just the... You see, the egg substitute has met all those other ingredients. It's so good. It really is. A little rice on the side, and you'll be delighted. How about that for a neat brunch? You've got either of those 2 dishes could be a great brunch for your family. Don't forget, as always, we're trying to minimize the risk because you care for people, and then maximize the flavor because you want to please people. We're such a mixture of the two, aren't we? Okay? Thanks so much for being with me once again. God bless you. See you next time. Bye. Welcome to Graham Kerr's Kitchen. It's really 2 programs in 1. This is a series that appeals to your creative side. Food that is sumptuous stuff. How could that be? This is a program about people who want to eat healthy and reduce calories. Actually, it's about food with an aromatic quality that fills the nose. Oh, sure. But it's also about keeping my arteries clean by reducing fat. But it doesn't mean a thing if the food isn't rich and colorful. Maximize the flavor. Okay, but I must have healthy food that I can cook in minutes. I must minimize the risk. So welcome to Graham Kerr's Kitchen, where we get our heads together just for you. And you're very welcome. Welcome. This one is a dessert, and super one. This is a cheesecake idea with the most unusual crust that you ever saw. I've got to get something on the go, so it's one of these tins, which is it's called light. I mean, everything's called light nowadays, isn't it? Evaporated skim milk. And that actually contains about 1.5 cups of evaporated skim milk. And then there are 4 packages of gelatin, I tried to measure to see how much is in each package, and it seems to be just a little under a tablespoon. So if you want to get it in bulk and measure it yourself, that's fine. So I just want to put the one into the other and just whisk that gelatin into the top just to soften it. And as you'll see, the heat's underneath, just mild heat underneath, just to be able to get that down so that every speck can be used. All right, come through. Let me explain what I want to try and do this time. Because what we're doing is looking at a cheesecake and trying to do something really radical, something different. Because you see, on the outside of a cheesecake, generally, is the crust. and I don't know whether you do this one, but most people seem to. There's graham cracker crust, which, of course, the graham flour was designed by a fellow called Sylvester Graham in about 1830. He was a Presbyterian minister and really got off his bike, which is an Australian expression, about, getting a whole grain flour once again, saying that to make white flour was just awful, without the full grain being there. So, when you make a graham cracker crust, you also put with that fat. So, what I'd like to try and do is to cut the fat out of it, surprise for me, and put something else in. Went ahead and sort of looked at it, and I found that the answer was a fig. Amazingly, the fig actually does that work in the same way that the butter seems to do. But, of course, with no fat whatsoever, and huge amounts of fiber, which I love. All right? So it's really quite a different technique. So if you'd like to see how it's done, really? Come on, let's have a go. Good. I'm just getting some green marker off myself. I seem to get myself stabbed with marker pen every time. Now, let's have a look and see how this is doing. If you put it over, the gelatin over a little heat and then just whip it together, it shouldn't take too long to be able to get out. Let's have a look and see how that's done. It's a bit hard to tell. Later on, I'll show it to you with water, but this one, if you look at the back of the spoon, there's still some little tiny flecks there that are still haven't dissolved. So just keep it on there and make sure that it dissolves absolutely before you add it. Great. Okay, let's have a look at the fig itself. And this is the one that I wanted to show you. The figs, I've got just 18 of these little fellas. It's about 1.5 cups of figs altogether. And each of these, when you get them, have got a little curly top on them, which is quite indigestible. There's no way that you can get that stalk and eat that. Well, I suppose there is. It's high fiber. Well, you already know about it, haven't you? Started to chew into it. Cut into the center. If you've never cut into the center of a fig, you're in for a great surprise. Look at the tiny little seeds that there are there. As a matter of fact, if you've got, false teeth, I'm terribly sorry to be personal like this, but I've got a false tooth in front, so I know. I got it knocked out by an Australian, playing golf, by the way. If you've got false teeth, and one of those little seeds gets underneath, it's bad news. But if you don't have false teeth, it's wonderful, because you can crunch all the way around your teeth. Wonderful texture. All right, so you've got 18 of those, and a small, 17.5, and you've got a small processor like this. It needs to be a fairly small one, because I'll show you how it works. And 1 cup of the graham crackers. Those are the standard graham crackers that go into it. And then just push the rest of the 18 on the top and top it off with the rest of the graham crackers they were. So it's in layers when you're setting it up. That on the top surface, and dial it up to about 6 on my machine anyway, and pulse it. If you've got a pulse, it doesn't run it, but it actually does it like that. That starts to get the things generally sort of agreeably combined. Right? Then run it. And what's going to happen now as this is running round, you've got the dry graham cracker crust, and you've got the sticky piece of fig, and they're getting to know each other. And they're really sort of linking arms together and gradually going round and round and round. And what you'll see, and it doesn't take but about 35, 40 seconds, it's just beginning to happen now. They're beginning to clump together and become a real dough in there. So it's just coming up. See, now it begins to start to clump, and the moment that it starts to clump, watch it carefully. That's it. Okay, stop it the moment that it clumps together. And you've got a tremendous stuff. Look at it. I nearly called it mixture, but I know I mustn't do that. And there it is down in the top. Now, with a certain amount of water, and water is fine for this purpose, you can't do it with just your bare hands. If you do it with your bare hands, it's sticky, and it's a horrible experience. But if you just get a little water on the board and just turn it around like this, you've got a piece of dough which is ready to be able to be used. Now, what I do with this one, where is it? Here we go. This is a small springform pan. And this one, about 7 inches, and normally you go about 9 inches. So the mix, if you've got a 9-inch one, it's not going to reach the top. But if you can find one of the 7-inch ones, I think they're better for the reason that you can get a smaller slice, yet a taller slice. Taller, but shorter. And that way, it has a good appearance, and you don't have quite so much to eat. It looks great. And that cuts down on the calorie value. Okay. So what I've done several different ways here, but just get it in a nice round shape. Put it in the bottom like that, and then press it out with your fingers, just like that. Press it all the way around so that you've got the base at about 1/4 of an inch. It shouldn't be, heavy at all. And spread it out to 1/4 of an inch thick. Just get, and just, if you go through, doesn't matter, just get a piece and just patch it up. And then just get your fingers at the sides and then just pull it up the sides. Now this takes about 3 or 4 minutes and it's a bit fiddly, so, but I mean, I'm sure you've managed to do that, and see after that if I can keep looking at you and then do this. Here's the one that's done. Just completely surrounded and ready for the mix. All right, let's put that on one side and have a look at the mix. This means getting a blender. I hope you've got a blender of some kind. And then into the bottom of the blender, have to go back to this and see how this is doing. Let's just do that check once again. There isn't a single fleck in that. That is completely clear. Good. All right, just warmed up enough. 5 minutes. Don't boil it, but just warm it up. And look, you see, it's creamy. It's almost like it has, thick dairy cream in it, which of course it hasn't. And then here, 3/4 of a cup of the soft brown sugar. Give or take a little bit off the side. 4 tablespoons full of cocoa powder. Now that gives it that chocolate appearance, and this is the cocoa powder that I have. By the way, this one here is called Dutched. You see how it's darker than this one? This one's got an alkali in it, which neutralizes the acidity in chocolate. I find it's easier to mix, and it seems to be less acid as well. Okay, 2 teaspoonfuls. Measure this one, because it's got to be exactly accurate, because you can ruin it if you put too much, of vanilla extract. Pop it in, the real stuff, nothing false. Slap the top on and whiz it, okay? Now, immediately, that's what I like about the Dutch chocolate. Immediately, that goes in, and that's just fine. When you... sudden noise. Now, 3 cups altogether of a small curd, low-fat cottage cheese. And do please add this 1 cup at a time. And let it really incorporate. Wait for the hole to appear and go for it. It takes about 5-6 minutes for that to actually take place. So, thank you. I didn't want to compete with it. Here's the one which has been done 5 or 6 minutes, and I leave 1 cup for the end. Just 1 cup. And then stir in 1 of those cupfuls of the low-fat cottage cheese, and that gives me a kind of textural change. Otherwise, it's really rather like pudding, in the middle, or a custard. But this gives me a chocolatey, vanilla-flavored, gorgeous combination. And all you need to do is to shove that in the refrigerator for a couple of hours, all right? And pull out the one that's set. Wouldn't you love it if you have this sort of thing available? Okay. Now, then with this spring form, you just simply do a clip like that, okay, and pull it off. Isn't that's, I think the person who invented that takes the biscuit for being the most inventive person I've ever known. I'd love to know who he is. And if you're still alive, do let me know, because I think you're terrific. Then you cut the slice, and this is the slice that we've looked at in terms of this. And warm a knife up first, just a little bit. Oh, good. Look. See how that sets up? Now, look at that. Just see how that comes out. And see the flecks on the side. Aren't they beautiful? If you didn't have the flecks on the side, it wouldn't be quite the same. And take a little powdered cocoa, and just to sprinkle it around the plate, just to let people know that you've got some. Okay, come on, let's see the numbers. Whoa, like it. That's nice. It's kind of, we should have a different name for it. What about the Milky Way or something, or the Sagan cheesecake? Right, that's what it looks like, and this is what we tried to do, to take the fat out of the crust and to put the fig in its place. And so I think it works. Let's have a look and see how the numbers react to this, because that's the important thing. All right, so instead of the classic cheesecake, in this case, this one is a classic chocolate cheesecake that I've compared it to, you have 413 calories. That's what it takes. So this one is 210. So we're over 200 saved to begin with. Okay, the fat's 28, which is almost half a day's supply of fat, you know. And so this is down to only 3 grams, one of which is saturated, which means that when you actually multiply the total number of grams by 9 and then express it as a percentage of the total calories, which is the way you get a percentage of calories from fat, it comes to only 11% for a slice of cheesecake, 11% calories from fat. And then cholesterol, look at this, 6. It's hardly worth counting. And then 292 in sodium. Dietary fiber goes up because of the figs to 3, which I'm always thrilled about. And let's have a look. Oh, look at that. It's tender, and the crust there. Remember I told you it has a crunchiness? When the figs are doing their thing, there's just a marvelous little bite to it, and it really works well, okay? Don't forget to stir a little bit so you get the flecks in like that. All right, now, as always, springboarding is really important, and this time, what I'm going to do in springboarding is I'm going to take a vegetable, because we're told to eat up vegetables and stop eating sweets and things. Oh, do you think it would be too sneaky if we actually got a vegetable and made it into a dessert and made it into a cheesecake? Anyway, because, I'm eating my vegetables. Well, I'll show you how it's done. Good, that's going nicely. What I put on here was just the same as before, except in this case, no evaporated skim milk, just plain water. A cup of water and the 4 envelopes of the gelatin. And that now, or there are little bubbles in there because there's not a speck of gelatin that hasn't melted out. Again, very low temperature, don't ever boil it, and it's so important to do that first, otherwise you'll get an oozy mix. All right. Just exactly the same as I did before, except on this occasion, there is, in with the 18 figs, these little chocolate wafers. I hope you've seen these. They're very crisp, and they break easily, and you buy them in packets, and they're called chocolate wafers. Look for them in the supermarket. They're quite fun. Okay, so just turn that on. Again, this, for me, is 6. Give it a quick pulse, first of all. Don't forget that, by the way. If you've got an old-fashioned machine, then you can turn the switch on and off, to be able to pulse it first. When it's done that, then you can run it. It's really just simply to get the dry crumbs and the sticky figs, well integrated together. It's such an interesting idea, this one. Works well every time. Think of springboarding. You've got some favorite cookies. Say, the macaroons, with the coconut. Not too many of those. Those macaroon biscuits, I could put those with figs and come up with a delightful crust on the outside. Maybe some peppermint in there at the same time would do it well too. All right, see when it starts to go at that precise moment, cut it down. And there it is. Now, that becomes then a chocolate fig crust. Now, I don't have to mold that up for you. You know exactly how we did that before. And what I want to do is to get this mix on, because this is really different. To begin with, then, the same basic gelatin structure goes into the bottom, and just pour that in. And then the 3/4 of a cup of soft brown sugar. And, it's just the same as white sugar, come on. But they add a little molasses back in it to color it. Very sweet, and you may even, when you actually taste this, want to get the sweetness down a little bit. Okay, now here, instead of the vanilla, this is a marvelous little collection. I've got powdered ginger, 1/2 teaspoonful each. Powdered ginger, ground cloves, and ground cinnamon. And that, when you put those together, they complement each other in a wonderful way because it spices the mix. So just pop that in. And let me see, what else have I got to put in here? Oh, and the cottage cheese. With the cottage cheese, you just simply pour a little bit of that in, like that, about sort of 1 cupful, and then start to whiz it up. I always put the lid on just in case, you know, I've wound up with this stuff all over the place. The only important thing to remember with adding this is just a little at a time, and wait, make sure that you've got the whirlpool, the sort of Alfred Hitchcock look in the middle. If that goes away, you've got to stop before adding the next bit. What that's doing, it's showing you, see, it's all gone. Creature from 20,000 fathoms. Up it comes. And then just keep pouring it in. Okay, so there is 2 cups of cottage cheese. That's the low-fat cottage cheese and small curd. All right, we'll just let that keep on doing its thing over there and show you what happens next, because this is the vegetable. And the vegetable here is the butternut squash. Didn't waste too much that time. And then place the blade on the top, press down, and it isn't too hard a squash. If you haven't tried this, by the way, just to bake it and eat it as a squash is just wonderful. But take about 2 pounds in weight altogether you'll need to scoop out for the amount that you'll need here. Place it, I often place it just seeds and all, just on a plate like that, but you can scrape the seeds off before you start. Into an oven, 350 degrees Fahrenheit, that's 180 degrees centigrade. Give it 40 minutes, takes just about 40 minutes. And then it comes out of the bottom. Quite delightful. See what's happening, you get 3. And all you do is just look at that. When it's beautifully done, it's so soft and tender that you can take a scoop, like you just scoop it out. It's so moist, and it has such a fine, delicious flavor to it as well. So all you then need is something like this. It's rather like a large garlic press. This is indispensable for whipped potatoes and this sort of thing. Fill up that cupful, and look, it squeezes through. It's called a ricer, and it squeezes all through, and you've got, it's nice and smooth, but yet there's just a little bit of mouth texture to that as well. So, when this is now whizzed up, and it takes about that time, 4 or 5 minutes, you know, you can stop it, open it up, and just look at this. Look, just imagine what that tastes like with that cottage cheese. See how that has gone down. It is creamy and soft and spiced, and the cinnamon is there, and the ginger is there, and it's all just marvelous. Now, you notice that I didn't whiz up the vegetable in it because I wanted a little bit of texture. You see on the top of that spoon there, there's a bit of texture in this, and I want that texture in the same way as I had texture in the previous one. Okay, done. Now, all I have to do is to get the spoon back out of the sink and add 1 cup of, yes, 1 cup of plain non-fat yogurt right at the end. Just stir that in. That gives a little bit of a tart bite to it, gives you the volume that you require for the bit, and just a little bit of extra. There's nothing, actually, there should always be, in all mixes, I feel, just a little bit extra, especially if there's kids in the family. Mommy, want to lick the bowl? There you are, darling. See? Just enough for lick the bowl. All right. Walk carefully. The only thing that can ruin it now is an earthquake. And into the fridge. 2 hours, and it should be set up so that instead of serving it, you can bounce it into your guest. It's not that. You might like to experimentally drop down just 1 envelope of gelatin just to be on the safe side. But it depends how hot it is when you serve these things. I think this is just fine like this. Okay. Just a knife, heat it up just a little bit first of all for serving. This is the kind of shape and size, just like the one we did before, that you can get with the numbers that I've got. A plate, and I'll tell you, I am beginning to enjoy the baking and dessert process. Look at that, will you? Look at that. Nice. All right. Now, if you get a very, if you get an orange, and you get that there are little peeling devices which you can actually score the outside of an orange, very thin slices, like these here. And what I did is put these into a pot with a little water and just bring it to the boil, and then turn the water off, you know, throw the water away. And that gives me a piece of orange zest, which is really remarkable because it's kind of, you know, it's a bright note, but at the same time it's not overpowering, which it could be if you left it without blanching it first. And you just throw little curly bits of that onto the plate. Isn't that great? You might have seen that in some famous restaurants nowadays. They're always throwing little curly bits of things all over the place. Used to happen by mistake. No, it happens by design. All right, there it is. There's it is. Let's have a look and see about the numbers. Stands up nicely. You see it's nice and tall. If you compare this then, because of that mold, which is only 7 inches across, you see how tall it stands on the plate, and yet it's fairly short. This one is longer, but it's smaller. And so I think you have a sense of, you know, getting a good plateful. Do you? Good. All right. This is what happens to the numbers. This is compared to the classic, which is a kind of pumpkin cheesecake, if you like. And this one here, I think, could be just sensational at Thanksgiving. You know, think of it. All right. 249 calories, under the 300, down from 366. But look at the fat. From 27 grams of fat altogether, that's down to 4. And from 16 grams of saturated fat, which I really don't like, that's down to 1. That's just 1 out of the 4. Then that means percentage of calories from fat, which was 65%, now is 13. And isn't that lovely to think that a thing like that can just be 13%? Boy. Cholesterol down to only 10. Sodium at 252, which is fine for dessert. And dietary fiber, a whopping 4. I've still got a piece of that orange in my mouth. That's nice to chew on. Okay. Now, actually, it reminds me of a fine cheese, doesn't it? With a sort of a crust on the outside of the cheese. See the crust there and how good that looks? Smooth, spicy, touch of orange there, crunch of the seeds from the fig. It is altogether very good. I tell you what, next Thanksgiving, I'm going to serve this for my family. In fact, I might serve it to them before Thanksgiving. Okay. Thank you so much for being with me. May God bless you and keep you and make all of your lovely efforts on behalf of people that you adore, you know, come off like that does. Success. Isn't that nice? God bless. See you next time. Welcome to Graham Kerr's Kitchen. It's really 2 programs in 1. This is a series that appeals to your creative side. Food that is sumptuous stuff. How could that be? This is a program about people who want to eat healthy and reduce calories. Actually, it's about food with an aromatic quality that fills the nose. Oh, sure. But it's also about keeping my arteries clean by reducing fat. But it doesn't mean a thing if the food isn't rich and colorful. Maximize the flavor. Okay, but I must have healthy food that I can cook in minutes. I must minimize the risk. So welcome to Graham Kerr's Kitchen, where we get our heads together just for you.
And welcome back once again. Now this is that wonderful opportunity of us to get our heads together and see whether we can get something which is really going to minimize risk and get some flavor going. And this one is a sauce, actually. It's a great sauce, and it's actually somewhat like the great sauces that you can get from Europe and all over the world. But this one is important, you know, because it deals with a flavor that everybody loves. Now, let's see whether that's true. Do you love French onion soup? That thing that are crusted with the cheese. Well, we'll clear the cheese off for the moment and just summon up that flavor once again. Okay, now that's a really popular flavor. That's important with something like this. Now, you see, here is a piece of food. It doesn't matter what it is, but that's a piece of food like that. Now, it's very important when you put a sauce over the top of a piece of food like that, then it doesn't actually fight the food that you're serving it with. And quite a few sauces do. So what I love to try and do in this day is to bring a sauce around to get underneath the dish, to get up underneath the food and make something more of it, especially when I'm not using a lot of fat and a lot of salt and a lot of sugar, okay? So that's what I'm going to do today, create an onion sauce, marvelously carameled onion sauce, and then show you what to do when you've got, you know, Thanksgiving and a load of turkey afterwards, and a great dish to do with that. Lots of comfort. All right, come through. Right, I need to get on with this because, you see, the first thing that I would do in this case is to take just a little oil and put it into a hot pan and start the process going. Now, what I've done here, just to show you what it looks like, the oil that I use is a little olive oil. And by the way, that is different from the normal olive oil. This one has been deodorized, so you don't get that full, pungent, extra virgin olive oil thing, which I love and which, you know, gourmets all over the world just extol. But in this case, I just want something which is right down in terms of flavor for those of you who are not into that kind of thing. So this little charming little fellow here is sesame. That's toasted sesame oil. And what I do is I put in about 1/16th part of toasted sesame oil. And now I know Trina's going to say to me, stir with a knife and stir up strife. It's one of those things in our family. And that then has that toasted sesame taste, and it's wonderful. Now, I'm just going to put a 1/4 teaspoonful of that. It's almost as if you're saying, look, why bother? But it's a signature item, and you can, because it's complexity. When you reduce fats, you have to come up with things that are genuinely tier upon tier upon tier of flavors and colors and textures, and it's wonderful. Okay, so we drop that down. Small sizzle as it, there we are, you can hear it? Good. As it hits the pan, and just stir it all around just to be able to get those onions just going fine. Now, there is a seed, a couple of seeds which can go wonderfully well in this. Now, here's a seed on this side. Those little seeds are called caraway seeds, and these are dill. Now, I wonder whether you can see the difference between the two. They are really quite different. They've got different functions that they play in flavor. But that little seed there is the dill seed. It's a wonderful seed, and of course it comes from dill, and it's dried, and they last forever, well, more or less. And here is a caraway seed. It sort of looks like a little tiny dried banana. Right? And those go into this. I don't want to waste anything. But I take 1 teaspoonful each of that. Now, those put into the onions, they get underneath the sauce, and they come up through it, and the flavors are extraordinary. And the moment that you start to fry in those, and it hits the pan, experiment, get down close to it, and it starts to come up and get you, okay? Onions are interesting things. I've just used an ordinary yellow onion, just so that everybody can do this. But here's a Walla Walla. By the time these come up, everybody goes crazy because this is in the state of Washington, the United States, and these are wonderful sweet onions, and just add that extra sweetness to this dish, which are great. But as I said, I've done this with a regular one. The Walla Walla, when it's dried, out of season, looks like that. And this one is a Texas 1015. which means on the 10th month, on the 15th day, they plant it. And that's a nice sweet onion as well. And there's a Maui and a Vidalia, which comes from Georgia. I've tried to find out whether in England, whether we have sweet onions, and apparently we don't. So I know I'm going to get 3,000 letters telling me, of course we do, old chap, you know. But anyway, send it in if you want to. Always interested in hearing. Okay, now, when that's frying, it fries for about 5 to 10 minutes. And I'm being sort of elastic about that. It depends how hot you do it. But on a medium-high heat, you can get some idea about how dark that can get down. See, that's before and that's after. So it gives you some idea about how dark it can be. All right, so that's doing there. That smell of the seeds are coming up brilliantly in that as well. To be able to get the texture off the bottom of the pan and into this dish is an interesting job. We do it with two things. One, which is a cup full here, that's a cup measure, of beef stock, and also a cup of red wine. Now, if you're not into the red wine thing, I use de-alkalized stuff just in case. But if you're not into that, you could double up on the beef stock. It'll show a difference, frankly, but I don't think it'll be a bad idea at all. So just if, you feel like that. And if you say, just the moment you got to the beef stock, I can't go with you because it's too complicated. Get a can of beef stock, get some thyme, peppercorns, and a few pieces of clove and a bay leaf and some parsley, and nice herbs, and put them in a little mesh ball if you like, or just chuck them straight into the saucepan, and just brew it up for about 10 minutes. It just makes all the difference in the world. It's a very quick way of doing stock, okay? And whoops, I normally pour in the red wine first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, 8 ounces, that's 1 cup, you see. Now, see the color of that? That's why the red wine is such a good idea, because the color mixes with a color which has now come off the bottom of the pan. Take all advantage of every residue, because that's where the flavors of the onion combined with the seeds together and have drawn out this wonderful flavor. So just get it all off the bottom. And here now is 1 cup of that beef stock with just that little extra herbal touch to it. And build the heat up underneath that and get that bubbling and nice and hot. Okay, good. Well, this is going well. Well, you see how simple it is? Very simple idea. Okay. This is the standard way that I thicken things. As you might know, this is the arrowroot deal. Arrowroot, in this case, has got about 1½ to 2 tablespoons full of arrowroot. Normally, if you've got a cup, 8 ounces of fluid, you put 1 tablespoonful for 8 ounces, and that thickens it nicely. In this case, I put just a little bit more. I've got just a little bit more. I've got almost 2 tablespoons full of that mixture going together. Okay. Now, because this is straightforward starch, it means that the moment that it hits a hot pan, it immediately clenches up. So if you've got a real heat underneath that one that I have here at the moment, it's sort of brewing up nicely. If you will do that, what will actually take place is little dumplings will form off the bottom of the pan. That's not what we want. So you move that off the pan base there and just stir it in. Now, you'll notice that this is the starch before it cooks. The starch before it cooks is that milkiness that it has to it. But now as it's absorbing, you can put it back onto the heat again. Yeah, and it's remarkable. I mean, just look at it. You see, it doesn't need to boil to thicken. It is just so soft. And when the milkiness goes out of it, the color comes into it. And look at the color that's in that. It's just delightful. Now, because it's so brilliant and because the arrowroot is so glossy, you could actually leave it just like that and just serve it. But I've got an idea that if you want a smooth sauce, if you don't want sort of all the bits of onion all over it, then what you can do is you simply slosh, I'll just show you a little bit of this. Just slosh a little of it into a blender, all right? And put the lid on the top and just give it at high speed, just run it for about, oh, I don't know, 30 seconds. I haven't really timed it to be sure. And then take a couple In this case, I've gone to the absolute apex of gastronomy, is a hot turkey sandwich. This is bread underneath and then, you know, the turkey on the top. All right. Now, in this case, you simply take a spoonful of it and dress whatever you're serving on the top, like so. And it's thick, but it isn't, you know, that thick. It doesn't mask in terms of flavor. It has a wonderful appearance. Tastes good too. And this one then, if you want to get it really thin, thank you, you then pour this. But look what happens. When you do it with this, it's a very nice, thick, glutinous kind of sauce, but it loses some of its sparkle, doesn't it? And because the sparkle comes from the lights hitting this with the arrowroot. But what you've actually done, you've taken the white of the onion and whizzed it into that and kind of, I think, lost it a little bit. I put a little parsley on the top of that if I was going to serve it like that, but I'm just really wanting to test the sauce itself, just the sauce. So there's the basic technique, simple one, isn't it? Just put it together and great dishes can be supported from underneath. Really, the interesting thing is that this can make a tremendous amount of difference when it comes to numbers. So I've never really sat down to a piece of turkey rather than the sauce like that, but it's the sauce that I'm really getting at the present moment. Okay, get back to the taste of that in a moment. See, that is the glory of a sauce which comes under something and lifts it up. By the way, thanks for letting me know about screwing up the paper. I will draw on the other side later. All right, now, these are the numbers, and this is how it works. The first one here, 180 calories, in the Minimax one actually just gets to be 84. All right? And then we get to the fat, which is just one only gram of fat as against 13. Saturated fat is absolutely 0. And that gives me about a 10% of fat from calories, and that's really good. Cholesterol is down to 12, and in this case is 0, and then sodium is 20, and then just a couple of grams of fiber at the end. So that really works out very well indeed. So it's just a question of the taste, as it normally should be. Now, here the darkness is there, the quality is there. It's amazing how sweet that is. That is a sweet thing, and it rolls over the taste. It's got that slight smokiness which you get from sort of cooking for quite a while, and I can really taste the caraway seed in it. It's really good. That works well. Okay, so that is something that you could use for, I imagine you're into it already. Now, I'll show you a very interesting idea when you've had Thanksgiving or Christmas or something like that. You've got a turkey left over and ham, right? And mound of potatoes, and it's steaming hot and gorgeous. Come along. Oh, where's my glasses? Nearly lost my glasses for a moment. Okay, now here is the sauce. It's on the go from just a little while before. I took out such a lot of it, but I think just stay nice and cool or hot, and we'll deal with it. All right, now let's say that we've got the typical Thanksgiving turkey sliced into it, piece of ham on the side, and you know it's the day after and you're wondering what to do with the leftovers. Well, this is one of the things that you can get to. And let me show you first of all what it looks like in terms of meat size, because I know that not everybody has a pair of weighing scales. If you go to the deli, now I'm just simply taking us to the place that if it isn't Thanksgiving, Christmas, and you want to do this anyway, so go to the deli, and ask them to slice it real thin. I mean, so thin that you can read the other slice. You could drape it over a newspaper and read the newspaper through it. So it's that thin. So you can get 2 slices of ham and perhaps a whole slice of turkey. Is it going to see where I am? And another piece of turkey, and that would give me about 3.5 ounces of meat altogether. All right? So there's the portion. That's the portion size. Very thin slices. If you're doing it yourself at home, I've no doubt it could be thicker than that. So what you do is get a little bit of oil, just a tiny drop of oil, and If you've got cereal bowls normally contain about 8 ounces. So you get a little bit of oil into the bottom there, and measure it with a measuring cup. Just pour it into the top, make sure that it works. And then take a slice of ham and drape it in on the side until it sort of half covers the bottom. Then take the other, there's the piece of turkey there, and fill up that side. Then you can just sort of chuck it in at will. There we go. It's a nice portion. I don't think, actually, I have a sense, I couldn't see the other side of the weighing scale, but I have a sense that it was just a little over. So I want to keep it to 3.5 ounces. All quite low fat and very lean ham. Okay, so there it is, over the top. Now, this is a russet potato, quite an ordinary one here. About 8 russet potatoes gives you about 3.5 pounds. And can you time me for a moment? Anyone got a stopwatch? Ready? Go. Okay. I need to be timed. I'm not out for a world record. I'm out to make a point here about peeling potatoes. I was in the army once and had to do this sort of thing just because I was who I was. Matter of fact, what I did, I said to the sergeant on the line, you know, I said to him, "What's that?" He was holding a little yellow piece of material on the end of a sort of spoon and was about to serve me with it. And he said, "Yours is not to reason why, yours is to eat up." And so I took it and I shaved a piece off it and sent it to the Ministry of Food, this is in England, and asked them for an analysis about what this was, because I was interested. And 2 weeks later, the commanding officer sent for me and said, "Did you send this to the Ministry of Food?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Well, for your information, it is Yorkshire pudding, and you have 2 weeks confined to barrack. March out." And so that was my first time of getting KP and having to do, you know, the work. How long did that take? Hey, 1 minute?
1 minute.
1 minute. Okay, now here's the point. It's 1 minute of personal KP labor. Do you want to do that? I don't know where you're coming from, but you can get powdered potato, and you can short-circuit all of that and get to it immediately. The only difficulty is that I find with powdered potato that it's kind of floury. For me, it isn't the same as fresh potato. So, 1 minute, you've got eight minutes to peel the potatoes as against sort of opening the package and going for it. So, it's your choice. Into warm water, 1/8 teaspoonful of salt, bring it to the boil, and cook it for just 10 minutes. Now, after 10 minutes, which is how long this has had, just strain them out through a colander, and then, I think I'm going crazy, then what you do is just pour it right back in again. Now, when they're completely dry, they've got enough moisture locked up in those potatoes. It's amazing, actually, just how much there is. And for 10 minutes longer, you put it on a low heat and put a towel on the top, and they steam out. And so what was a waterlogged piece of potato is now perfectly cooked, and that has a sort of flouriness on the outside, you see? Now that is perfectly cooked potato. Believe it or not, chefs in London actually have to go through a test to see whether they're going to work in a famous hotel. They have to cook boiled potatoes and make them come out just perfectly like that. All right, so put that into a mixer and just run it slowly. And I've got here about half a cup of buttermilk. And you know, some potatoes are drier than others or wetter than others, and you're going to have to sort of work that through yourself. So then about 1/8 of a teaspoonful of additional salt onto the top, some freshly ground white pepper, which is really just black pepper with the overcoat knocked off it. But this way it doesn't look like it's, you know, somebody's mended the roof on the top. And just simply curl it round like so. And then this is an intriguing idea. This is a nutmeg shaver, because it's hard to grate nutmeg. And there are little shaves of nutmeg going down there. Not too much. You don't want it too nutmeggy, but just enough. But again, about 1/4 teaspoonful would be fine. All right, so that is all whipped up, and it starts to sort of combine together. Very low speed, all right? Good. And now, just take some of this. Now, this can be hot, or in this case, of course, it's cold. But you take a spoonful of it, And if you're doing it hot, then it's quite easy to do. Just simply dash it in on top there and smooth it out so that it comes not quite to the lip, right? And then just move the little bits of the extraneous pieces of ham and turkey back from the outside. Then the way that I like to do this is to put, for a family, is to put foil on the top of it, stick it in the oven, and just heat it up, right? Then everybody gets it nice and hot. Put a plate on the top. This is the time when you pray. And just put a knife underneath, and it should all... I said this is the time you should pray. And it all comes out and looks absolutely marvelous, doesn't it? A nice mound of the meat over the top. And then with that spoon, where's the spoon? You just make a depression on the top there so as to hold some of this. When it comes out, it's hot, it's gorgeous. Then take the sauce that you've made and simply pop the sauce over the top like that so that it runs like lava flows down the outside. And then a little bit of parsley rain down on top, all over. In fact, when you're doing dishes like that, just overdo it a little bit more. Throw a little parsley around the plate as well, and it looks great. Great. Good. All right, now you see, you remember that technique here? They are now on this low heat, steaming through. It's really hot, steaming towel. You could use it to shave afterwards. Just comfortable food. All right, now there is the dish. Let's see how this compares with the sort of thing that I did earlier on. It's that famous hot turkey sandwich. So there it is on the dish. Now, look at it for a start. It's glistening as it glistened before. It's got nice texture to it. Looks pleasant on the plate. This one is the standard with whipped potatoes on the side or bread underneath it and slices of turkey and that cream turkey sauce. Let's compare the numbers and show you just what this looks like. Okay, believe it or not, the thing that we have used so much in the past is 893 calories for that size there. And in our case, we've dropped that to 422, virtually cutting the calories in half. 22 grams of fat drops to 3 grams of fat. And then, of those 3 grams of fat, just 1 gram is saturated, which means that we've only got 6% of the calories that are actually coming from fat, which is really terrific, and especially around, you know, Thanksgiving time, that sort of thing. Okay, cholesterol is down to 33, and then sodium at 7, and virtually, you know, I don't have the numbers today for fiber. Well, that's because I had cereal for breakfast. So those are very good numbers. Now, all it really takes is to actually see what it looks like when you carve into it. And actually, as the family carve into it, they can eat it like a pie. You cut a wedge of it, and there's the hot, steaming, well, you know, and the ham, that's like saltiness. And the turkey, and the potatoes with the buttermilk, and just that touch of nutmeg in it. And that sauce goes so well with it, it's just wonderful. All right? So I really hope that you enjoy it, have a wonderful time. Don't forget, minimize the risks in things, maximize the flavor, and I'll be back with you next week. God bless. Bye.
Graham Care's Kitchen. It's really 2 programs in 1. This is a series that appeals to your creative side. Food that is sumptuous stuff. How could that be? This is a program about people who want to eat healthy and reduce calories. Actually, it's about food with an aromatic quality that fills the nose. Oh, sure. But it's also about keeping my arteries clean by reducing fat. But it doesn't mean a thing if the food isn't rich and colorful. Maximize the flavor. Okay, but I must have healthy food that I can cook in minutes. I must minimize the risk. So welcome to Graham Care's Kitchen, where we get our heads together just for you. Well, welcome again. This time, of course, we're going to have another look at those things where we minimize risk for you and at the same time boost the flavor, because you can't do the one without the other. If you take risk out of something and don't fix it up, what it is, it's dull and terminally bad news. So that's what we're trying to do. I'll do a little simple thing first and then just expand it a little bit for you. What we call springboarding, so that you can actually see the things that I do and think, ah, neat idea. I can bounce on that idea of his and do my own thing. That's what I'd really love to happen, if you would. All right, first things then, let's have a look at this. Creamy toppings. Now, almost everywhere that you go, I mean, you could have a slice of pie, or you could have, let's say, a muffin like this. Almost everywhere, say, look, here's a typical one here. What's that? I knew. Potato, of course. What you do, you wind up, you put things, you say, somebody comes and say, do you want it a la mode or with whipped cream? Yeah, well, fine, yes, of course. And how about on your muffin in the morning? A good spread, perhaps. And what about in the potato in its jacket? Why not just put it? Do you know, it's amazing wherever you go, there's a little bit more. Do you know that this could add up to 200 calories? And this one could add up to 85 calories? And this one, 95 calories? I mean, just one after another. So I thought it'd be pretty neat if I could actually get together with you and show you some of the ways of touching each one of these elements, but with less fat in it. Would that be all right? Okay, come, I'll show you how it's done.